Hey everyone, thanks for clicking. This is Rocky here with my video on what went wrong with Constantine. Alright, I'm going to do my best not to rant too much during this video, but it's probably going to happen at some point, so there's your warning. As I'm sure most of you know by now, Constantine was officially dropped from NBC earlier this year. From that point, the showrunners in the studio started shopping the show around, and there were hopes that it could possibly get onto the CW, as its ratings were relatively comparable to both Arrow and The Flash, and it would allow for magic to actually tie in to the Arrow universe. Sadly, this never happened, and the cast and crew were all officially released from their contracts. Not going to lie, this upsets me as I was so happy to finally see Hellblazer get a network show, as it's not your typical superhero story. Now, in my mind, there were a lot of mistakes made that led to the show getting canceled, and I want to discuss some of them with you all. Let's start with what I feel are the mistakes that were made by NBC itself. Okay, so NBC had no freaking clue what they were getting into with this property. I remember reading reports that they nabbed up Constantine just so they would have a comic book property. Yep. Just jump on the bandwagon without knowing what you are getting into. Hellblazer is not the same as, say, Green Arrow, Flash, Superman, etc. It's more akin to Detective Comics, in my mind, though still not that cut and dry. So this automatically caused them to approach the property from a very bad angle. Marketing for the series could not even be considered a joke, as there were limited TV spots, interviews, or really anything at all. Throughout the entire series, the bulk of the advertisement came from the cast and crew of the show over social media. Most of the cast participated in Q&As as well as live tweeting during the episodes. So basically NBC was getting free advertisement out of their actors. Then came the late Friday night time slot, which has typically been reserved for dying shows or shows the network does not really care about. It's worked for some shows, but for most it's just too difficult of a fight. Then, for the back half of the season, they changed to an earlier Friday night time slot, but again did not really do any advertising on this. So when January came around, a ton of people missed out as they thought it had been canceled for a couple of weeks. This was not a Friday night show, in my opinion. Now, for me, one if not the biggest mistakes made with Constantine was no true international release. So let's take a comic book title with an English character and not release it in the UK or anywhere else. Oh, that's right, it was on the UK Amazon Prime. This is just unforgivable. Before the show aired, there was a ton of hype from international fans of Hellblazer dying to see it on the small screen, and they got screwed. This just made no sense in my mind whatsoever. The short 13-episode season really kicked the show in the balls though, as they had just basically named the big bads of the show. We got pretty much no wrap-up to the plot started, and we're left with a lot of unanswered questions. Now this does fall onto the crew of the show as well. I feel they did the best they could, considering it was a shortened season and they were hoping for, a 20+ episode season. So yeah, from a network standpoint, the show was set up to fail and fail hard. NBC again had no idea what they were doing with this show, and if it had been handled correctly, they had a cast and crew that would have brought in great ratings and a fresh audience to the network. Now let's talk a little bit about reviewers. Yes, I know this is odd since I'm one of them, but still going to give this a go. I can't count the number of early reviews of the show I read where the reviewer did nothing but watch the leaked pilot and completely wrote off the show, without even actually watching the official pilot, let alone actual episodes. Now, anyone that watches a television show knows it takes at least 3 to 4 episodes for a new show to really set in. Anyone that based a review on the show on the first 2 episodes alone, I just completely ignored. I mean, they have the right to their opinion, don't get me wrong, but I just don't see how you can write something off that quickly. So yeah, just another piece of the puzzle that added up to the end of Constantine. Okay, don't get me wrong, the show itself did have some issues, and while these weren't numerous, they're still worth discussing in my opinion. Let's start with the name Constantine itself. which was a bad move in my opinion. Reason being that it made a lot of people connect it to the movie starring Keanu Reeves. This caused a lot of "Keanu is the only Constantine" spam all over the net and just annoyed the piss out of a lot of people. Going with Hellblazer would have been a much better choice, but it's possible this decision came down from Warner Brothers since the new 52 title is Constantine. Another big issue was how the leaked pilot was handled, as due to the backlash they ended up writing out the character of Liv, and it just made the pilot clunky. There was so much emphasis throughout the entire pilot placed on Liv, and just to write her off quickly at the end, it just didn't feel right and didn't sit right with me when I watched it. This also caused them to switch up some episodes, which resulted in confusion and continuity issues with John's character and others. I believe it was the Rage of Caliban episode was actually meant to be the second episode, which is why it would have had such a larger impact on John's character, as right after leaving Ravenscar, he's dealing with another, potentially demonic possessed child. And with everything that happened with Astra, he's got all those issues with the demonic and children. So that didn't happen until I think it was episode 5. So yeah, there were a couple other episodes, I believe, as well that were kind of switched up. So there were some continuity issues there as far as character building. Now, another issue was having no real big bad to root against was a pretty huge deal, as I feel they waited too long to bring in the Brujeria, as well as revealing that they worked for Manny. People need someone to hate in these shows, and with Constantine we did not get that, as we only had this vague idea and concept of a rising darkness that in some episodes was not even discussed at all. So there was never really a threat or urgency felt by the audience, which caused many to view the episodes as nothing more than the quote-unquote monster or freak of the week shows. Ideally, they could have presented the Brujeria earlier on, showing some of the members, which would have given us a face to see John fight against, and then still do the big Manny reveal later on. Alright, another huge sin was not taking advantage of the character roster they had at their disposal, as they had access to pretty much the entire magical universe within DC Comics. And the most we got were Easter eggs and references for some, and then the big Spectre tease. We saw Nergal in flashbacks, but he was never really used again. References to the First of the Fallen, but again, never used. If they had used some of the more recognizable characters, it could have made the show a bit more approachable to non-Hellblazers, but they were wanting to go for their own vision, and then bring in these additional characters in later seasons. Personally, I think a Zatanna, Zed, and John love triangle would have been pretty fun, especially considering he would have more than likely played both of them, and they would team up against him in the end. But yeah, some of the more recognizable characters would have been huge and definitely could have added some additional views for the show. Alright, so now comes the rough part as we look in the mirror a little bit. Yes, fans had a huge part to do with the failure of the show as well. How many times did you hear the arguments, "If he doesn't smoke, then I won't watch"? "Swamp Thing or no go," or "If he is not banging someone in every episode, then I'm boycotting the show." I know I read a lot of different versions of these arguments for pretty much the entire run of the show. Yeah, I was one of those that really wanted to see Swamp Thing and other characters. What's hard to understand as a fan is that television shows have to fight hard to earn additional episodes and seasons. This means they have to do what they can to make the network happy, as well as to appeal to a mass audience. This goes times 100 for a brand new show, and in particular one based on a comic book. Now the thing is that the showrunners were listening to this feedback and were trying their best to meet the needs of the fans. By episode 5, John was pretty much smoking in every episode, and this increased throughout the rest of the season. We did see John have some meaningless sex, but as the show was really pushing the John and Zed ship, they just didn't develop that angle of the character much. Alright, let's face it, Swamp Thing was just out of the picture for the first season due to approachability and special effects costs. This same thing could be said for a large chunk of the characters we all wanted to see on the show. There were also a lot of fans that never watched past episode 2, as they did not feel this was the real John Constantine. Like I said with reviewers, you have to give a new show a solid 3 to 4 episodes before it really sets in, and I just have to say that episode 4, A Feast of Friends, was amazing to see as a fan, and it is one of my favorite episodes. Okay, so with Constantine cancelled, what's the future potential of this show? The property is freed up, so we could eventually see it in the form of another show, but part of me doesn't want this to happen. I feel we had such a strong cast and crew that any other show would just kind of be a shadow of it. Even if you could get some of the cast together, it just wouldn't feel the same in my eyes. Now, what could be interesting is to see characters like John, Zed, and Chaz guest star on other shows. I know the Flash and Arrow showrunners have been very vocal about wanting John Constantine to appear on their shows, and in particular being played by Matt Ryan. They've just dabbled with the idea of magic in the Flareoverse, and Constantine could be used to really expand this concept. Also, there's still a lot of talk about Del Toro's Justice League Dark movie that would have a strong focus on John Constantine. So I do see potential for Matt Ryan to take on the role of Constantine again, just not sure about the rest of the cast. Then again, there's always the idea of some form of fan-funded continuation of the series, but maybe that's just dreaming too much, right? Okay, to sum this up, I just want to say a huge thank you to the cast and crew of Constantine for bringing one of my favorite comic book worlds to life and entertaining me every week. I know you all will go on to do big and better things, but a part of me will always want to see John, Zed, Chaz, Manny, Papa Midnight, Corrigan, Gary, Richie, Anne-Marie, Liv, and all the other supporting characters on screen together again. So once again, my heartfelt thanks for Constantine. Alright guys, thanks for sticking around for this video. Those are my thoughts on what led to the demise of Constantine. Go and let me know down in the comments below what your favorite part of the series was, or favorite episode, favorite moment, whatever the case may be. Go ahead and put it down in the comments below. I would love to read what you guys have to say. Or if you'd like to discuss some reasons why you think the show didn't succeed or anything like that, definitely let's have some conversations down below. Love to talk with you guys about Constantine. I still think it was an amazing show, and again, I'm very sad that, we're not going to be seeing any more of it in this form. In future forms, maybe. I hope so. So yeah, if you've enjoyed this video, I know it was a little bit ranty, but if you've enjoyed my thoughts on it, go ahead and pound that like button, and please subscribe to my channel. That way you can receive an alert when I post future season reviews, or top moments, or anime reviews, or any of the other videos I'm doing right now. To subscribe to my channel, if you're watching on your computer, you can click the subscribe annotation on the screen, or if you're on a mobile device, there's a subscribe button down in the description below. That'll work for you. And if you have gone ahead and subscribed already, thank you so very much. I really do appreciate you coming on board, and I so hope you've been enjoying the videos. Alright guys, all that being said, I hope you have a great rest of your day now. Bye.